I want to start today with a bit of a visualization exercise.
Okay.
It's a little visceral, I should warn you,
Yeah.
but stay with me because it completely changes how you look at the human body.
I'm in.
Okay, so I want you to imagine the entire volume of blood circulating in your body right now. For an average adult, we're talking about, what, 5 liters?
Roughly, yeah. Think of it like 2.5 of those big soda bottles just coursing through your veins.
Right. Now, knowing everything we eat in the modern world, the bagels, the sweet coffees, pasta, all of it, how much actual sugar do you think is dissolved in those 5 liters of blood at any given moment in a totally healthy person?
Well, if you ask most people, they'd guess something pretty substantial.
Yeah, like a cup, right? Or maybe a few tablespoons.
A few tablespoons at least. But the reality, and this is the stat that just floored me, is 1 teaspoon.
Just one.
That's it. 4 grams.
That is the line between life and death.
It really puts the fragility of our biology into perspective, doesn't it? We operate on such an incredibly tight tolerance.
It does. And this is where it gets terrifying. If you go from that 1 teaspoon to just 1¼ teaspoons, you're technically pre-diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hit 1½ maybe 2 teaspoons, that's full-blown diabetes.
We are talking about a margin for error that's measured in just a few grains of sugar. It's a chemical tightrope walk every single second.
And yet, and this is the impossible math we have to solve today, the average person isn't eating 1 teaspoon of sugar.
Not at all.
They're consuming anywhere from 50 to 100 teaspoons of sugar and carbs every day.
Which creates this huge physiological conflict. The body is fighting a war to keep you at 1 teaspoon while you're dumping in 50.
So that is our mission for this deep dive. We're looking at a presentation from Dr. Eric Berg, and we're going to unpack how the body even manages this.
Right.
We'll get into the hidden mechanics of the liver, the 13 ways you might be getting your blood sugar testing wrong, and then the blueprint for how Dr. Berg says you can reverse the dysfunction.
And it's such a fascinating story because it moves us away from just, you ate too much sugar.
Yeah.
It helps you understand it as a breakdown in communication between your organs. It's a system failure.
So let's start with the mechanics. If I eat a huge bowl of pasta, I'm flooding my system with glucose. Why don't I just drop into a diabetic coma right there?
You can thank your insulin for that. Think of insulin as the body's heavy-duty vacuum cleaner.
Vacuum cleaner, okay.
The moment that sugar hits your bloodstream and pushes you past that 1 teaspoon limit, your body recognizes it as a toxic emergency.
Because high sugar is really dangerous.
It destroys everything. Nerves, blood vessels, your eyes. So the pancreas pumps out insulin to rush in and just suck that sugar out of the blood immediately.
And where does it put it? It can't just disappear.
No, it can't. So insulin grabs the sugar, and first it tries to stuff it into your cells for energy, if they're full. It shoves it into the liver and muscles as something called glycogen.
Like little sugar packets for later.
Exactly. And if those are full, which they usually are, it just converts the rest to fat.
So insulin is the janitor just sweeping all the dirt under the rug so the house looks clean.
That is a perfect analogy, and this leads to what Dr. Berg calls the invisible problem. When you go for a checkup, what do they test?
Fasting glucose, usually.
Right, they test the amount of dirt on the floor, but they almost never test how hard the janitor is working. You could have perfectly normal blood sugar, that 1 pristine teaspoon, but your insulin levels could be 10 times higher than normal, just struggling to keep it there.
So the engine is redlining, but the speedometer looks fine.
And Dr. Berg argues you can be metabolically sick for years, even decades, before your blood sugar finally cracks. By the time you're diagnosed, the damage has been going on for a long time.
That's really unnerving.
Yeah.
It means normal blood sugar isn't a clean bill of health.
Not if your insulin is screaming. And eventually the cells just get tired of it. They get tired of being stuffed with sugar.
They put up a do not disturb sign.
They stop answering the door when insulin knocks. And that is what we call insulin resistance.
Right, and that's where you get this paradox that drives people crazy.
Yes.
You get the diagnosis, they get scared, they cut out all sugar, but they wake up, test their blood, and the number is still high.
And they feel defeated. They think, I'm doing everything right. Why is this happening?
If you're not eating the sugar, where is it coming from?
The call is coming from inside the house.
The liver.
Specifically the liver. Dr. Berg calls it a sugar factory. It has this survival mechanism called gluconeogenesis,
Which means?
creating new sugar. If you were a hunter-gatherer and couldn't find food, your liver would make sugar from fat or protein to keep your brain alive.
Okay, that makes sense for survival.
Yeah.
But if I have too much sugar in my blood already, why on earth would my liver make more?
Because of that insulin resistance, insulin has 2 jobs. One is to clear sugar, but the other is to tell the liver, hey, we're good, stop making sugar.
But if the liver is resistant,
It never gets the memo. It's deaf to the signal. It thinks you're starving even when you've just eaten.
so it panics and starts pumping out its own sugar.
It does. And Dr. Berg uses this staggering statistic, the 80-20 rule. He says in a diabetic state, your high blood sugar is often only 20% from your diet.
And 80% is being manufactured by your own liver.
Exactly.
Wow, that completely flips the script. You're not just fighting your dinner plate, you're fighting your own organ.
Which brings us to the really practical side of this, because if you're trying to manage this, you're testing your blood sugar at home. And this is where Dr. Berg lists 13 specific ways people mess this up.
And looking at this list, these are not obvious mistakes. I think most people are making these.
Absolutely. So let's start with what he calls contaminants. This is the most common one. The classic is the fruit factor.
Okay.
You're in the kitchen, you slice an apple, you get a microscopic bit of juice on your finger, you wipe it, think you're clean, and then you test.
And the number just goes through the roof.
He calls it pseudohypoglycemia, a false high. That tiny residue of fructose mixes with the blood and can skew the reading by a massive amount. You have to wash with soap and water.
Okay, but what about the little alcohol wipes? That's what everyone says to use.
Right, but he flags two huge problems. First, if you test while the alcohol is still wet, it dilutes the blood sample.
How much of a difference are we talking?
It can drop your reading by 10 to 40 points.
40 points. That's the difference between I'm fine and I need to call a doctor.
It's a huge swing. And the second issue is that some wipes contain glycerin to keep them moist. Glycerin is a sugar alcohol. It will register on the meter.
So you are literally adding sugar to your finger before you test.
You are. So unless you wait for that alcohol to completely evaporate, good old soap and water is actually safer for accuracy.
What about the technique? I see people squeezing their finger really hard to get a drop of blood.
He calls that milking the finger, and it's a big mistake. When you squeeze that hard, you're not just getting blood, you're forcing out interstitial fluid.
The clear liquid around the cells.
Right, and that fluid dilutes the glucose in the blood. It creates a false low reading, maybe by as much as 30 points. You get a false sense of security.
He even mentioned which finger to use, which I've never considered.
Yeah, he advises against the index finger and thumb. You use them for everything, so the skin is thicker, more calloused.
So middle or ring finger is better.
Middle or ring finger on your non-dominant hand. That's the sweet spot.
Okay, let's talk about the invisible factors. Things you might take that mess with the test itself. I was surprised to see Tylenol on the list.
Acetaminophen, yeah. It chemically reacts with the enzyme on the test strip.
So it's not actually raising your blood sugar, it's just fooling the meter.
Exactly. Same thing with high-dose vitamin C. You could see a false spike of 30, 40, 50 points and not realize it's the medication, not your body.
And what about caffeine? I mean, so many people test right after their morning coffee.
This is a tricky one because black coffee has 0 sugar. But caffeine is a stimulant. It triggers your adrenal glands to release cortisol and adrenaline.
And stress hormones tell the liver to.
Dump fuel. Correct. So the coffee doesn't have sugar, but the reaction to the coffee mobilizes sugar from your liver. You can see a real 20-point rise.
What about where you are physically, your environment?
Surprisingly, yes. Temperature extremes can affect the enzymes in the strips. So if you test right after a sauna or a cold plunge, the reading can be off by up to 30 points.
He mentioned altitude, too.
Yeah, this is just physics. The meters use oxygen for the chemical reaction. At high altitudes, say 10,000 feet, there's less oxygen. The meter gets confused and can give false results.
And the last one that feels really common is dehydration.
Basic fluid dynamics. If you're dehydrated, your blood volume drops. The water goes, but the sugar stays. It becomes more concentrated.
So your number looks higher, but really you just need a glass of water.
Exactly. It can raise your reading 10, 15 points. And he stresses electrolytes are key potassium, magnesium. You need them to get the water into your cells.
Okay, so that is a minefield for the finger prick. But now we have CGMs, the little patches you wear on your arm. People think those are the gold standard.
They're amazing tools, for sure, but they're not magic, and they measure something different. Remember that interstitial fluid we talked about?
The stuff that dilutes the blood if you squeeze your finger.
Right. Well, a CGM only measures that fluid. It never touches your actual blood.
Does that matter? I mean, sugar is sugar.
It matters because of the lag time. Your bloodstream is the engine of the train. The interstitial fluid is the caboose. It takes time for the sugar to get from the blood into the fluid.
So if I just ate a donut, My blood knows instantly, but my arm patch doesn't know for a little while.
There can be a 15 to 20-minute delay, sometimes longer, so you can't compare a finger prick and a CGM right after a meal. The numbers won't match. You have to wait an hour or two.
And what about those compression lows?
Oh, this scares people all the time. Your CGM alarm goes off in the middle of the night. It says you're dangerously low. You panic, you chug juice.
But really,
You were just sleeping on your arm. The pressure pushed the fluid away from the sensor, causing a false low reading.
it sounds like we need to take all these numbers with a big grain of salt. Let's talk about the dawn phenomenon, though. Why do people wake up with high blood sugar when they haven't eaten for hours?
This goes right back to that liver factory. Around 8 a.m., your body releases a natural surge of cortisol to wake you up.
And because the liver is insulin resistant.
It misinterprets that wake-up signal as an emergency fight-or-flight signal. So it dumps a load of sugar into your blood to fuel a fight that isn't happening.
It's the liver overreacting to the morning alarm clock.
That's a great way to put it. It's a classic sign of a dysfunctional liver.
So before we get to the solution, let's touch on the last metric, A1C, the 3-month average. Dr. Berg brought up a really nuanced point about race here.
He did, and it's critical. The A1C test works by measuring how much sugar is stuck to your red blood cells. But the test assumes everyone's red blood cells live for the same amount of time, about 3 months.
And that assumption is wrong.
It varies. He cites research showing that red blood cells in Caucasian populations tend to die a bit sooner than those of, say, Asian, African American, or Hispanic descent.
So if your cells live longer,
They collect more sugar, just like a sponge that's been sitting in water longer. So a slightly higher A1C in some populations might just be biologically normal for them, not a sign of being sicker.
that feels like a huge blind spot in how we interpret these tests.
It is. And he makes a similar point about a keto diet. It can make your red blood cells live longer because they're under less stress, so your A1C might tick up a little, confusing your doctor, when it's actually a sign of better health.
Okay, so we've gone through the problem, the faulty measurements. Let's get to the good news. How do we fix this? What's the blueprint?
Well, first, he frames the standard medical approach as glucocentric. It's all about the sugar number.
We treat the smoke, not the fire.
Exactly. We use drugs to force the number down, but the underlying insulin resistance just gets worse over time. We're managing the symptom.
So how do we treat the cause? The liver.
We have to rehabilitate it. And the good news is the liver is incredibly resilient. It wants to heal.
So what's the protocol?
It's a two-pronged attack: what you eat and when you eat. So a low-carb ketogenic diet combined with intermittent fasting.
Why both? Why not just one or the other?
Because low-carb stops you from pouring more fuel on the fire. But intermittent fasting is what actually heals the insulin resistance. See, every time you eat anything, you trigger a little bit of insulin.
Even healthy stuff.
Even a handful of almonds. So if you're snacking all day, you're pulsing insulin all day, and the liver never gets a break.
But by compressing your eating window.
To 2 meals, or even 1 meal a day, you give your liver 18-20 hours of silence. That's when the healing happens. That's when it starts burning off its own fat.
And how fast does that work?
He cites data showing you can strip 50% of the fat out of your liver in just a few weeks on this plan. As the fat leaves, the liver becomes sensitive to insulin again.
It starts answering the door.
It starts answering the door, and it stops pumping out all that panic sugar.
And he also mentioned a few accelerators, right?
Yes. Exercise is a big one, especially in the morning. If you wake up with that dawn phenomenon, go for a brisk walk. Burn off that glucose yourself.
What about apple cider vinegar?
There's real science there. A tablespoon in water before meals. The acetic acid helps your muscles absorb sugar, so your pancreas doesn't have to work as hard.
And berberine.
Berberine is a natural compound that acts a lot like metformin, the main diabetes drug. It basically tells the liver to stop making so much sugar.
And the final piece of the puzzle, I'm guessing, is
stress and sleep. You can't fix this if your cortisol is high all the time. You have to lower the stress to let the liver rest.
So to recap, we started with this realization that our blood sugar balance is incredibly fragile. It's 1 teaspoon. We learned the liver is often the secret villain, overproducing sugar because it's confused. We navigated all the ways testing can go wrong, and we finished with a protocol that's not about medication, but about retraining an organ.
It completely shifts the power dynamic. You're not just a victim of a number on a screen. You're the manager of a biological factory.
It's incredibly empowering. But it also leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to end on.
It does. If the standard of care is to treat diabetes by just managing the blood sugar numbers.
Painting over the cracks in the dam.
Right, while the underlying pressure of insulin resistance just keeps building in the background.
Are we actually treating the patient?
Or are we just putting a piece of black tape over the check engine light so we don't have to look at it until the engine finally blows?
That is definitely something to sit with. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
See you on the next one.